welcome to the LiveCast Conversations With. On this show, my guests and I explore the bumps and triumphs of their journey to extract the gems from their experiences, because success leaves clues, and today we turn those clues into billboards for you. I'm your host, Gene Bernier, founder of Pealed Back, speaker and co-active coach, guiding leaders to ruthlessly pursue a life worth living. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 100. It's been 100 episodes since me and this guy sat down for a call back in October, I think, of 2020. It's been quite the ride. So if you don't know who that guy is, well, you definitely should. His name's Tom Broxham. His motto is that today's connection is tomorrow's opportunity. He's a public speaker, a facilitator, avid or outdoorsman, father, and cheesecake lover. He gives people the ability to network confidently by showing them the necessary skills to start a conversation and gain opportunities anywhere. Through public speaking, swimming, public speaking, swimming, and connection with people were all skills he learned as an adult. These were three of the biggest fears he had to overcome. Instead of shying away from these fears, he's facing them and turning them into his passions and leading the way for others. As well, his first book on networking, which is about networking, is launching in the next few weeks. Tom, bring it home, brother.
Oh, that's it? You sold me. I don't have anything else to say now. All right.
Thanks, everybody. It's been a great show.
Yeah. There are actually some people that do only come on here for like a couple of minutes and then disappear. It's not a bad thing if it gets you comfortable and it gets a conversation beginning. Hey, yeah, all the power to it, right?
You got to step into that fear, right? And I've known you for a long time, and even in the write up now, you talk openly about fear. Tell me about how since October 2020. How your relationship and how you show up to fear has changed in those past 2 years, man.
Geez, you start off with a toughie right away. I've explored fear a lot more, but I've explored it a lot deeper the last few years. And then when I had a speaker coach, actually it was in 2020 that I got my speaker coach, and that's when that kind of started. And we started exploring a couple of things, but afterwards, Michael and I had a lot of conversations about different aspects, and every now and then he would ask me a question or would say, like, let's explore this a little bit. And then I would have a weekend of, chances are, quite a few tears coming down my face after I explored some of my fears or where different elements were coming from.
Yeah.
And it's more that exploration. Like before, when I learned how to swim, it was, I'm just going to go do it, and not thinking about it and just hammering through it. And now it's more, all right, I want to explore this a little bit. Like, what's kind of going on? And like when I started doing my live casts, I wanted nothing to do with it. I hated it. I'm like, it's just awkward. And then I would sit there like for 10 minutes just playing my my intro. And it wasn't live. I'm just playing it, and I'm like, all right, go live, and blah, 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 I'm uncomfortable, and all right, see you later. And then eventually I was like, I got to a point where I was so comfortable that I could go on there and do it. And I didn't think it twice about it anymore. But like, I've explored it to depth a lot more about any of my fears compared to back then, where I had the fear, I did it, and then that was it.
Right. Through this exploration, how would you now define what fear is? If you had to leave this as your one thing to leave for somebody, as part of your legacy, thanks Lewis Howell for this idea of a question, but like if you had to redefine what fear means now, how would you define fear?
Geez, you're just really tossing out the gooders to me right now. Like, fear, a lot of it is what you make of it.
Hmm.
It has to do with your experiences and how you react towards it. But it all comes down to what you make of that fear. Sometimes fear can paralyze us. Sometimes fear can actually excite us. Sometimes fear can drive us. Uh, Imposter syndrome. That's a kind of fear,
Yeah.
right? I have imposter syndrome. I don't want to do this, and it could stop people in their tracks when people called
Yeah.
me an expert, whisperer, wizard, and 10,000 other names. At first, I was like, I'm not an expert. Like, don't call me that. I got uncomfortable, bought a ton of books, started reading them, but that uncomfort drove me and really pushed me um, to work on my skills and to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
A few years ago, that fear would have been, I'm out. I'm
Yeah.
done.
Like, oh, fears showed up. That means I got to be out of here. I can't be anywhere around here. It's here for a reason. And what I hear from this is like, yeah, it is here for a reason. But now you're looking at exploring, like, okay, well, what are you actually afraid of? Like, well, it kind of sounds like, well, what if they laugh at me? What if they find out that I'm not good enough at what I'm actually doing and the messages that I'm saying? They're like, you're a fraud. Be like, ooh, be like, been there, done that. Done 100 of these to still be, am I a fraud? Like, what's happening here? And it's interesting hearing how your redefinition of fear. It's like fear was a stopper, but now it's like I hear you hand in hand with fear on a journey.
It really depends on what you're doing with the fear when it hits you.
Hmm.
And like I said, it could be a big motivator for people, or it could be a demotivator. It
Yeah.
really depends. And I've dealt enough with a lot of my own fears, and some of them deep-seated fears and traumas. Like I'm talking about over decades,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really bother me. But it depends on where you sit with that fear and how you deal with that.
Hey, the I know you've been really open about sharing like on link because LinkedIn's your home. That's where you do a lot of your stuff. I say home online for your business and everything else. We'll get into that in a little bit. Uh, but you've been open about sharing about the traumas from your bullies and your near drowning incidences and all the things that have led you to that place. And now hearing that evolution with that fear, because that stuff stuck with you for a long time from the way you've shared it to being able to face it and using, I'm sure at times fear became, like you said, that motivator, like, motherfucker, I'm getting through this. And now it kind of sounds like, what are you indicating? What's here?
Yeah, some of that trauma just it stuck with me, and it paralyzed me for the longest time. And now every now and then when I start going down some of the rabbit holes and exploring things, like there's some serious tears that are coming out. But a lot of it, it when I started really diving into what the fears were and why they were, how they were all connected, it
Yeah.
was amazing. Like all of a sudden, it's like all these brain waves that are coming through here and there, and you're like, oh, okay, this is why I do this. This is how this is happening. This is where this is coming from. And it was amazing. Like all of a sudden, you go from just being, why am I afraid to this? Being like, oh, I've got about 100 different things that are in here. Now I understand all these elements and how they're all connected and where they're. Oh wait, that's actually dating back to here. I thought it was here, but it's starting way over
Yeah.
here. And it's amazing how your journey starts going that way. And
Nice.
it could be an interesting journey.
Oh, it is always interesting, right? There's a little beware. There's trauma in there. Like I look back because that was a statement that came up a few weeks ago. Like while you're going back and looking at those roots, is like there is, and there's a bit of a reliving, and there's a bit of, of exploration that goes down to it. And this is speaking at, I'm no therapist. I'm not a therapist at all, right? But there, to get through some of that stuff is like it's re painful, and trying to find those roots is like where you think that root is. You like you say, you get to it, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it goes deeper. Ooh, and deeper and deeper, and then all of a sudden all the things that are happening, like you say, start to unravel, and you're like, oh, it makes sense now. Oh, I can forgive myself.
And some of that does come to being able to forgive yourself, or being able to say, look, it wasn't your fault, or maybe
Yeah,
you feel like you need to go back and give yourself a little cuddle from way back when, and you're trying to be the person that you needed then, that you
yeah,
didn't have then, right? And yeah, sometimes you just want to be able to go back and give yourself that cuddle. Like when I started looking at some of my fears, and then my mom had sent me a picture from when I was 9, when I nearly drowned again from my bullies. I remember looking at the picture, and then I just was crying and crying, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, why did they do that to that kid?
yeah,
And then it took a while to be like, okay, let's reel it in before I start crying here or something. But I'm like, let's reel this in, and all right, let's take a step back, and
yeah,
then I was able to start connecting other pieces too. But and sometimes I do share side by side pictures of when I'm like now compares to
yeah,
way back then, and just being able to say like to myself, hey, you can forgive that little kid, or go give him a little cuddle because he needs it. He's still
yeah,
deep inside of you. Uh,
yeah. And sometimes that's it's not that deep either. It's that little child within us is like, ooh, he can get pricked pretty easily sometimes when you're not aware of what's going on. That's been the experience I've had as I've learned to deal with, that type of stuff as well, the bullying and the self doubt and all the things. Like, oh, this is what I've learned as an adult. Be like, oh, no, this goes way back. Oopsies.
yeah, it's interesting when you can start going back, and like it, it helped me just exploring with someone else a little bit, and then going off on my own exploring it, reading more, and then reading some different psychology books, and all these other books, and being like, oh, okay, now I get some of that.
Yeah,
uh and some of it is, you go from that incident that happened, and that's where the fear was coming from,
yeah,
to how can I explore, like, getting over the trauma or something else, or other accidents, or other areas, and then you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, this is, and you go from just being really upset over that incident to discovering all these other areas, be like, oh, now I understand it from a psychological point of view, and I understand it from a human point of view, and you're like, oh, okay. And it can really help you heal that trauma.
yeah,
Depends on who you are. Some people really need to go into a counselor, or other
yeah,
elements like that, and other people can be like, I'm going to cry for the weekend, then I'm going to read a bunch of books and be like, okay, yeah, now I
yeah.
get it.
No, and all those modalities are out there, and like here's the message: if you're struggling, reach out. They connect with the people that are right, and maybe you're going to find not the first one might not be the right one, but trust in that there will be others who will be able to help guide you and provide that safe space so you can learn the tools to start going through that and exploring it. Because then all of a sudden, I think the superpower comes down to this place of like, wow, now if I can hold fear and go on the journey with fear instead of it stopping me all the time, I'm not so responsive. I can figure out like, ooh, I'm having a reaction. When else have I had this reaction? What has it meant? How have I overcome it? Cool. I get to now choose how I'm gonna do.
Well, an important part that you brought up is just having conversations with people, right? And what ends up happening is you get to a point where sometimes you realize that you need to go have conversations about that specific aspect, or
Yeah.
it's, now I understand where this fear is coming from. Now I can talk to people openly about it, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
I can find that help that I need for it.
Yeah.
uh, Being a stay-at-home dad, all of a sudden I went on to Facebook groups, and I just did a post to say, hey, I'm a new stay-at-home dad, this is kind of what I'm going through, and then people opened up to me. But
Yeah.
before, that would have been a fear of, don't tell people that. Like, no, yeah, you
Yeah.
just, yeah, you're good, everything is perfect. No, like, just to go tell people what's really going on,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden all these people would open up to you, right? So sometimes being able to think about, explore that fear, see where it's coming from, and then being able to talk it out. And sometimes it's being able to write it out, or whatever works best for you. What I have done before with some fears or something negative in my mind is I'll write it down, and then for me it becomes something that's physical. I've been able to go and crumple it up and chuck it away,
Cool.
and then all of a sudden it's disappeared.
Yeah.
It is such a small little aspect, and you're like, this happened. You look at it and usually you're like, is that all? Like, I'm upset over this really insignificant thing from 10 years ago. God, can we just get rid of this now? And then physically writing it down, being able to see it from a physical point of view, and then crumpling it up and throwing it, and all of a sudden it's gone.
Yeah.
It went from something that was mental to something physical, and then once it's physical, you can actually deal with it. At least in my mind.
If for you, that's what works, right? It's like that little bit of, you get to be Mary Kondo, be like, you do not spark me joy anymore. Goodbye.
Yeah.
So let's transcend this into stepping into that connection component. Then you've been able to bring fear along with you, and now you've brought in yourself to this place where you've gone from today's connections, tomorrow's opportunity, to realizing, we've done a lot more conversations around the power of the conversation. Oh, actually, I want to, before we jump in there, John actually has a great question. Are you able to expose everything transparently, or do you still keep things hidden? Great question, John.
Some things I keep hidden in the sense of I don't talk to people about it. It's just strictly for me. It depends on what it is. There are some people I do trust, and I will tell them just whatever it is. But there are some things I keep not so much hidden, but I don't openly explore it with other people.
And do you still find the value in that act of doing the processing, regardless of how you've shared it? I know, John, you used the word transparency, but there's a component of like, some things are just for me. And like you said, maybe that act of crumpling it up and tossing it away, that's just for you. And now it's no longer there. And there's other pieces that you may get to, and you may realize that by sharing this has become somebody else's survival guide. Somebody else was sitting out there going, I'm going through the shit. And then somebody decides to be, and I'm going to say brave, to post this, whatever you're going through, on whatever online platform, or share it in person. And they're like, oh, I'm not alone. There's a seed of hope. There's a spark of hope. And maybe they can start thinking about that differently, even if they don't engage with it, right? But that's a spectrum of making that choice, and depending on where you're at and how you choose to engage. And I think that word of like, where do you be transparent with it? I think you try to be transparent in the process with yourself. Misery loves company. Well, I think energy loves company, right? And depending on where you're at in that energy, you're going to attract like attracts like. But Tom, what do you think there?
When I told you earlier that I wrote this post, and LinkedIn deleted it on me, and it was just the screen refreshed, and then all of a sudden it was gone. And I was going to be very transparent about everything, like just a lot of different things that I've never been transparent with before. And the reason why I didn't post it, and besides the fact that the screen refreshed and everything disappeared on me, was I started thinking, is it going to help people? How does it help people? And then in some aspects, whatever, are people going to care? Or are they going to ask me about that specific incident because they want to know, or because it's this morbid curiosity? And as an example, when I was backpacking, I got robbed once. And so instead of people talking to me about the fact that I traveled for a year and a half, all these really cool countries, I had all these really neat experiences, they want to talk about the fact that I was robbed. That was it. That was the only thing they could focus on. I'm like, I went swimming with nurse sharks and stingrays, and from someone that drowned, that was awesome. One of the best experiences of my life. But they want to talk about that one negative thing.
Well, that's
so sometimes Yeah, sometimes I don't want to talk about something because I'm like, do I want other people to know about it, or am I afraid that people might use it against me, or is it something that's just for me? And like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not a bad thing to hold certain things to yourself or to hold
Yeah.
them to a few close people. It really
Yeah.
depends on, is it going to help people, and do you really want people to know?
And I think there's at the end of the day, like you get to choose. That's the power within it, right? And that comes down to your choice. And there's no right or wrong. It's like what is right in this moment for you. Because maybe years down the road you'd be like, oh, I will share that. But right now, you're like, no, that doesn't. I don't want to fixate on it. I've come to terms with it. I've talked with a professional about it. I've talked with close friends, or I've been able to work through and disarm whatever that was. And I don't need this to be like the highlight reel of my hiking journey.
Yeah, yeah. Eh, Are you comfortable with it or not?
Yeah.
And do you really want to explore it with other people or not? Sometimes telling people that that incident, maybe that's the only thing they can fixate on, and other times it might be like, I don't want to,
Yeah.
it's instead of exploring these other really cool things, they want to focus on that. So it depends on a lot of different factors for yourself.
Yeah. I agree. I agree, brother. Well, thanks, John, for those questions. And they sparked some excellent conversation today. Feel free, anybody else who's watching in, you put the comments in. We do see them back here. So happy to have those conversations. That's the part about the live cast that is nice here. But segue done. Now let's get back into how has the idea of connection and conversation evolved now over these last 2 years. Is you've been on your own journey of like what it means to be going from the networking guy, and I'm sure I've even called you the networking guru in the past and made you cringe, but like you do have a gift of building community and networking and showing people the what can happen if you just walk up and say, hey, how's it going?
You know what? That is probably one of the best things you could actually start a conversation with. Hello or hey.
Yeah.
That's it. A smile and a hello can go a long way. And people do ask me all the time, like, how do you start conversations? Whether it's on LinkedIn or at networking events, how do you start conversations? Hi. It doesn't always have to be fancy. It doesn't always have to be very sophisticated. Sometimes it really is just those small things.
Yeah.
And so as I explore networking with different people and as I explore conversations with different people, 3 of the best ways to network: sports, volunteering, and coffee, really.
Yeah.
But there are 2 of those. That wasn't the middle finger, by the way. So 2 of those you learn from a kid.
Yeah.
What are some of the best things to do as a kid? Sports and volunteering.
Yeah.
So for that's what you do as a kid, but very much that's what you do as an adult too.
Yeah.
You want to connect with people, one of those.
Yeah.
What happens with a lot of people when it comes to conversations is they're so focused on what I need instead of let's just talk to someone. And when it comes to a networking event, they're about conversations. They're not about getting a job. They're not about finding clients. They're about having a conversation. And when I say having a conversation, listening actively, and not just for my chance to talk. It's to actually hear what you have to say, explore it, and ask the person questions.
Yeah.
That's what the conversation is really about. And so when I discovered, like, hey, that's all I need to do, and that's what a networking event is about, that helped get rid of a lot of my fear. And now I walk into a networking event, I might have a goal of I want to talk to 5 people, or I would like to meet this person, but that's about it. I don't think about getting clients or any opportunities. I just want to have a conversation with so many people.
Yeah.
Takes away all the pressure, and you can walk in there with a smile and be like, I'm going to go meet some people.
Yeah.
That's it.
My goal is to meet some people.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, you know, part of your catchphrase is tomorrow's opportunity, though.
Well, you need to start with a conversation. Trust relationships, they come from the conversation. How do you get opportunities? How do you get a new job? How do you get clients? Conversation. Well, through a relationship built on conversations and trust. And it all comes down to having that conversation. That's how where the opportunity comes from. And an opportunity can be a million different things depending on what you need in your life and what you're
Yeah.
looking for.
John's staying engaged. I love it. Do you prefer walking up to a group of people or a single person?
Single person. So, a few different reasons why. One, I've been that single person in the room, awkwardly standing there, waiting for someone to come up to talk to me. I've been the person to be like, how do I go over to that group? I do have strategies for being able to get into groups, but I like the first thing I do when I walk into a room is I just kind of scan around to see who's there, how the layout is, and just get myself comfortable. And then I look for those individuals that look a little awkward and look like they don't want to be there. Or I look for the person that they got a nice smile on their face and their eyes are even smiling. The eyes are like pulling you in.
Yeah.
And it means, hey, like, come talk to me. I'm a nice person. But if they're like over smiling over, like, oh, I don't know. But no, I always look for those individual people. And
Yeah.
sometimes now, the last networking I walked into, I wasn't even in there for 5 minutes before I had people coming up to me, which was fantastic. It's always better when they come up to you instead.
Being, yeah, you told me about that. It felt like you were the bell at the ball there. They were all coming, giving you hugs, and big Tom, the guy. We've seen all your videos. What's going on?
And that was a lot of time, work, and effort to be able to get to that. And that's also good brand recognition.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the mustache.
Oh, little column A, little column B. It definitely adds to that brand, right? So, and I think as well, like your ability to bring, if people aren't following Tom on LinkedIn, go do that. I don't even know if you mess with TikTok anymore, but like Tom has this way of presenting himself through video, and that laugh that you hear that we just heard and his little dances and stuff, help bring the fullness of him. And I think when what you've shared with me about your experience of going to that because you're in New Zealand right now, and getting to go to that first in-person meetup with people that you've met through LinkedIn in New Zealand, like they felt like they knew you. The way that you've explained that was be like, and they're like, I know Tom. Tom's a friend because I already know him because he shows his fullness on there. So somebody who maybe hasn't taken that step into being, Tom on video quite yet, is like, how do they step to that going, I'm brand new to this town. I don't know anybody. Okay, what do I do?
I've felt that 1,000 times over. And there's quite a few different strategies you can do for connecting with other people. And some of it I did mention, like sports and volunteering. You can do different things like that. Because I spend so much time on LinkedIn, I know a lot of the networking events that are on there, they're going to be posting on there. This is the start. Go and engage with that post. People will see that you're on that post. And I've had people tag me in the post, and all of a sudden, everybody starts kind of looking. Who's this Tom guy? What's he about? And then they see my content, they see my videos that are out there, and all of a sudden they get an idea of who I am and what I'm about. And that makes a difference. So by the time I step into the networking event, people already see who I am, know a little bit about me, so they have a reason to come up and talk to me. Instead of me going into a dry, cold room, nobody knows me, and having to do all the hard work then. Now, a lot of that work has already been done by posting content, by being relatable, and having good videos on there. I don't know about good, but...
My words, you don't have to wear it, but you can accept the compliment. But for the people that are starting out, is like, so that they have stepped into that room. I guess where I'm curious is like, it's not lost hope to still go up and say, hey, how's it going? I'm new here. What do you guys know about this place?
Those are two really good things to say. I'm new here, and what can you tell me? Or like, what do you know about this place? Who do
Yeah.
you know here? Why are you here? Those are really good questions to ask.
Yeah.
And they're good open questions.
Yes.
And that's the key. Like, you ask open questions instead of, is this your first
Closed-ended.
time here? Yes or no. And they might just be like, yeah. All right, well, okay. Now where do I go? But if you ask, like, what brings you here today? Oh, well, I'm going to tell you all about it.
Yeah.
And it gives more of a reason to be able to just tell a story or to say a little bit more. And that will make a difference too. There is still a lot of value of just being able to walk into that room and by yourself and approaching a group of people or approaching an individual person. Thankfully, I do have lots of other little strategies for it as well too.
Well, John brings another one, which I know we've talked about, is eating manners. If food's available, do you stay away from food or engage or indulge?
Okay, so the first thing I do is it depends on the time of day that I'm going to the networking event. And so the last one I went to, there was food that was available, but I ate beforehand. And I don't like to have a massive meal in case, you know, you're feeling a little bit bloated and the such.
Yeah.
But if that way, if you go there and you have a little bit, like you're not walking in there starving, being like, oh, I just got shoveling food down my throat and being like, blah, 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 and all of a sudden now I'm like, is there spinach in my teeth? Like, can people see something? And I'm Mr. Insecure in that way, and I'll be like checking in. Oh, how's my breath smelling? So when I go to them, I will eat a little bit of food if I do see it going around.
Yeah.
One thing I always tell people though is, don't stand by the food table. That's one of the worst spots to go to, because what ends up happening is I get my little tray of food, like if it's at a table, people want to get away from there, and then all of a sudden they want to go find a spot to sit, or they want to go find a spot to stand. And think about, like, when you're going to a restaurant, when does this server come up and ask how your meal is? You got a mouthful of food,
mid-bite
right?
food, yeah.
And it seems every time we go to ask someone like a question, what happens? They just happen to take a bite of food.
Yeah.
And so it can be difficult that way. And so I don't avoid food, but I just eat smaller amounts when I'm there. It is great, like, if they're just going around, because it's that small little appetizer that you can get in a couple of different bites. So don't try to go too hungry or anything.
And don't be hanging out by the table. That's not the place to strike the meaningful conversation.
You can start a conversation, like, especially if there's oh, have you tried those sandwiches there? They're really, really good, or something else. But yeah, there could be a little conversation starters there, but it's not something you want to get too in depth with yet.
Right. Don't keep going back in line hoping to keep the thing going. Don't be the person hanging out just by the food. Now, what about,
unless it's closer to the end of the night, then you can do that.
Well, and I think as well, like, maybe I'm putting words to John's mouth here, but I'll take a swing at that too. There's a place of using food as a mask to be like, oh, I'm eating, so I'm like safe and I can be not seen right now, and I can't talk to people, I'm eating. Be like, it's almost, I look at that thinking from John's questions, like, it triggered within me going, oh, I've been that guy that's used food as like my safety blankie.
Yes, it's like you have your shields up, literally. This is my shield. And same with a cell phone. Like, someone's got a smartphone in their face, it's because they want their shields up. They don't want people coming over to talk to them. And it's not always that best time to go and explore. And I know once you're walking away from the food table, you're kind of looking for that spot to sit anyways. So it could be that difficult situation. Compares to when you get a drink, for example. All of a sudden, and it doesn't matter what drink it is, like whether it's alcoholic or non. And then all of a sudden you feel like you're safe, and you feel like, hey, I've got something in my hand, so I've got something to do with this hand, and I can go and explore and talk to people now. I feel like I'm comfortable. And it's also good to have that drink, because now it's okay, I've got half a drink. I'm not enjoying this conversation. Let's get this drink down so I can go get another drink. Or maybe I have to excuse myself to use the facilities compared to the food, and then you're like, oh, I'm almost feeling kind of awkward. What do I do here?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, you can go up and get more food, but yeah, I like the drink table a lot better, especially if
Yeah.
it's an evening event and there is alcoholic drinks around there. Just don't overindulge.
Engage, but don't indulge.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's also part of like the spirit of what you're talking about is like engage, but don't overindulge as well, just in that conversations, right? Like have appropriate amounts of them. What do we got? John, you're just dropping the questions right now. Let's keep bringing them up. Proper arrival time and departure time from networking events. I always seem to be the last to leave. I've often wondered if that seems a bit too desperate.
So I always like to go early, or at least try to go early. One, not everybody's in a conversation then, because there's nothing worse for me. Like, and I used to hate this. I'd go to a networking event. Let's say it's already been on for 15 minutes or half an hour. Everybody's involved in a conversation. You're like, how do I get into these conversations now? If you go early, you might meet those individuals that are by themselves, that they just want someone to talk to. It allows me to get comfortable in the room. I can look around and I can feel comfortable before everybody else starts to come in. Maybe I can meet the host. Maybe I can ask if they need some help. There's just a lot of really good, valid reasons to go early. Leaving later, it depends on your energy levels. Like, can you stay the whole entire time? If you can stay the whole entire time, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if all of a sudden they're cleaning up around you and you're still there,
Yeah.
and it that can be a little awkward then. And if they're kind of giving you these looks of like,
they're flashing the lights going,
it depends. It's not a bad thing to be one of the last people to be at that event. It really depends on those circumstances and how well you could read other people. But if you're having a great conversation with someone, by all means, stay.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to leave. You don't have to leave early.
Right.
Just because everybody else is left doesn't mean you have to.
I hear from that is like, don't force it one way or the other. Like, be aware, and it comes back to like that awareness of that fear that we talked about at the start of this episode. Is like, be aware of where you're at and how the engagement's going. Are you still getting what you're doing? Are you there still to meet people, or are you having now some great conversations you want to keep continuing? Or was the night a dud? And you can go, you know what? I'm not feeling it. I'm not going to be my best self, and I'd rather allow people to remember me as my best self. Say la vie, salut, and I'm out.
So I went to one networking event, and then a few of the people that were around me, they were quite heavily intoxicated, and I knew they were trying to drag me out. And I'm like, I don't really want to go. So I did excuse myself early. In one sense, I was like, I wish I would have stayed, not for that group, but for the other individuals that were there that were having a good time. Yeah. But I knew that people were trying to drag me into another area, and I'm like, no, I really don't want to. Yeah. And so I left a little bit earlier, but I know I've left networking events when I felt I'm drained, I'm tired. Yeah. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore.
I've been there too, recently, right? And it just, I think just be aware of it and give yourself a little bit of that grace as well, and be like, it's okay to recognize that my battery is empty, and this is not the place I'm going to push beyond this right now.
It's really important to, like, for someone like me I'm an ambivert, so I've got introverted and extroverted qualities, but I do get to a point where I'm tired. I don't want to do this. Yeah. And when you get to that point, you can either take a break or leave early. Yeah. Whatever your energy level is like.
Yeah. Manage that energy, right? So yeah. I think that's that important piece. Is like, again, it comes back down to like, what are you there for? And the more, from what I hear from you, the more pure you can make it about just starting some conversations, or maybe there to meet some people you've already had conversations with and continue conversations, comes down to the gap between the conversation and those opportunities is that relationship. So are you there to spark conversation to add some energy to a relationship or create some new ones.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. And there's a piece of this, the unspoken piece is like, don't be afraid to go first.
Know why you're going to the networking event, and
Yeah.
if you haven't asked, if you have a specific ask, know what it is.
Yeah.
If you do need help with something, it's okay to need help with something, as long as you're not, hey Gene, it's nice to meet you, so can you give me a job, or can you give me this, can you give me about 10 other things that I want?
Give me.
Well,
No.
but if I happen to know that Gene is going and he knows John that's over there, hey Gene, would you mind giving me an introduction to John?
That's a much different way of approaching it, right? And respecting that connection and that relationship as well.
Yes. Yep.
So you remember how I said beforehand we were gonna get on to having a conversation? I'm gonna look up and we're gonna be beyond 40 minutes. Dude, we just crossed 41 minutes. I do want to be respectful of your time. I know you got a family, but if you want to go for another 5 or so minutes, I'd be happy to keep the ball rolling for a little bit.
We can go for a few extra minutes here, because this is your 100th, and how far this has come from 2 years ago, where it was, hey Tom, do you want to jump on a livecast? Sure, I'm in the middle of a field right now, but okay, let's go.
I always think back to that. You're like, well, I'm at the in-laws, gutting some. What are you gutting, chickens or something, or something around that? And it was windy, and here we are on Zoom going, I don't know how this, I think it's working. It says it's working. Cool, let's go. It's the richness of the conversations have definitely grown over those last 2 years, as we have, working through all these things, and to be able to come back. And, I think the power of that initial conversation is all about, it started around conversation, started around community building, because that's where we were both looking at and like going, what could we do with our voices? And so here we are. We're having multiple conversations. You've been on the show, I think, four times now. You were part of a group call, and you were on number 1, number 50, and now number 100.
You got to get more guests, no?
I guess I got to go out and have more conversations with more people.
No, it's been great to watch in your journey on here the last couple of years, and like where you've come from the beginning to how you've even developed with your questions. Yeah. And there's just a lot of things that have really developed, which are really cool to see on here.
Yeah, thanks, brother. And thanks, John, too, for the milestone. Yeah, it's definitely been a milestone, and be able to come out of the gate rocking and hitting Tom with 2 gooders right off the bat. Be like, that doesn't happen. It's not very often someone gets to step on Tom. So,
well, they at least try to now.
Well, and to kind of wrap up this conversation about going to an event, we'll end with John. You had a question about, will you hand out the good old business card? Tom, what's your take on being Mr. You had a video where you were like, you get a card, like back in the early days.
So I actually don't have business cards at all right now. And most people that I know that do have them rarely hand them out. Like, so they go to a networking event, and let's say they meet 10 or 15 people. Maybe they hand out 1 or 2. And when I go to the last few networking events I've gone to, I've only gotten a couple of them. People that are in, I'm going to say 20s and early 30s, they do not have business cards, or they never touch them. Everything is on the smartphone now. Yeah. There's lots of different apps that you can have, and there's also a way to be able to scan your LinkedIn to someone else's right off the phone, using the QR codes. And so that's incredible, just to be able to go and connect with them right then and there, instead of having to, I've got to type that in, and oh geez, I got that wrong. Yeah. So yeah, I rarely hand out business cards, and it has been a long time, but I do know I need to get some, because there are people who they still do heavily rely on the business cards. Yeah. So it's good to have a few, but yeah, the worst thing you can ever do is go to a networking event, Just hand them all out like candy to every single person around, because you know where they're gonna go. They're gonna go in the garbage can behind.
Yeah. You're going to take them back to your office, and you're going to put them in your good intentions drawer, drop them in there, and they will never be seen again.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
I had when I had when I worked, especially at Cheeky, we did a lot of traveling around to conferences and stuff, and like for I think we went through 3 iterations of our business cards over like 8 years, and each one, when I left, I still had all 3 boxes that I kept one for each of them and threw out like hundreds and hundreds of business cards that we just never got used.
Yeah, I've heard of e-business cards and stuff, and that's not something I've explored myself, but there's a lot of different tools compared to that old paper business card, which most people didn't really use that much.
No. And and if you can get them on LinkedIn, well, there's another opportunity for a conversation, because be like, now you're not running. I got you.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, and if you're crazy like me, you're going to put like your phone number and your real email address right there on LinkedIn, which is going to make it super easy for somebody to connect with you.
It's all about the connection.
It's all about the connection, because apparently today's connection is tomorrow's opportunity. Did I get the hand motion right?
I can't remember how it goes.
Well, John, thank you as well for John saying, "Good talk, boys." Thanks. Thanks for being part of this conversation, John, and joining us along from Facebook. We really appreciate it, and it makes we're filling up 50 minutes here on number 100 easily. So I think we're at the point now we can, Tom, give a little shout out, little humble brag about what you're doing, and maybe tell people how they can connect with you. I know we've got the links down below, and LinkedIn is Tom Broxham. Give us the rest.
If so, I spend the majority of my time on LinkedIn, but if you do want to find me another way, yes, you can find me by my email address. I do have a website that is just finally coming out. Woohoo! And that's tombroxham.com, and that's where you can find a lot more out about me and the services that I do provide. And so the services I do provide, it's helping people start conversations, whether it's on LinkedIn, and that does go with your brand, creating content, and just how you can get into the conversations. And I also do help people out with going to networking events, getting them comfortable, feeling confident at those networking events. I do have a newsletter that will be coming out very shortly, and my first book, which is coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's on LinkedIn, and it's called #No Phonies Allowed.
Ooh, I love it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'll be glad when I'm finally done the final little bit of it.
Well, when that is out and available, we will definitely be helping push and get that into people's hands. So anybody that enjoyed this episode, make sure to come check back on Tom's site or Pealed Back. We will be supporting #No Phonies Allowed.
It's funny, I had that one out for a while, and I kind of kept a secret what it was about. And some people were like, what's the deal with this hashtag? And then when I told them, like, oh, that's brilliant.
I love it, brother. All right, anything else to share about what's happening in your world?
It's back to dad life, really.
It's back to dad life once we get this show done. Well, you've heard it here. If you are looking for ways to enhance your networking events and be able to show up and start those conversations, go connect with Tom. He's going to definitely help get you through that and coach you through this. As well, Tom, are you still doing your Thursday or Thursday for me, Friday for you events?
I haven't the last little while just because of getting over a horrible flu for the last little while, but I will be relaunching those very shortly.
Yeah,
because I missed them.
Oh, so Tom would host these events on Fridays in New Zealand, which worked out to be Thursday evenings here. Great format, and he would have 5 questions, would break you all off into little pods to go discuss these questions and to share. every time I went to one of them, like the energy was ripe, and I could just imagine what it would be like in person, because you brought the energy for these virtually, and we were bringing people from all over North America, South America, New Zealand, Australia, making friends and making connections there. So if when those do come back out, if you're looking to make some connections, Tom definitely puts you into the shallow end, and that pool is warm for good reasons.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
All right, sir. Well, let's hit the last question here before we wrap up episode 100 together. So we're going to jump into my time machine. We're going to go ahead 10 years into the future. When that door opens, what is future you saying thank you to you for?
Thanks for all the hard work, all the tears, sweat, and blood you put into this business, and thank you for even trying to hold the tears back now. But thank you for all the hard work you did. It was hard, miserable at times, but you got through it, and it helped future Tom out.
I love that. That's a great place to be. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for putting in the hard work and being here today. Present me thanks you. All right, and on that note, this is episode 100 of the LiveCast Conversations With. Usually this is the point in time where I say I'll see you next Wednesday. We're actually going on a break. It's been 100 Wednesdays of this, so we're going on the break for the next 6 weeks. Do definitely check it out, because we are going to be taking this show onto the audio platform as well when we relaunch with season 5, which will be coming out sometime in September. So from me to you, thank you so much for coming along on this journey, for finding and listening to all the bumps and the triumphs of myself and my guests, and hopefully you've been able to unlock a few gems along the way. Until next time, remember, it always just starts with one. We will see you then. All right, Tom, thank you so much, brother.
No problem. Thanks for having me on for the third or fourth time or whatever it is now.
All right, and now we sign off.